Okay.
I just wasn't sure which one to go to.
Okay.
I found it. Thank you.
12% when you have enough so we'll see what happens. I just gotta watch it.
And 1783.
I saw all those things blank on that one I got on my email. I was wondering who was going to do those.
We did, Venture Fame does them when they come in, and that's the way we've done it every year because we don't get the final valuation until December 15th. And I don't know why the state does that.
Can we change that?
If the state law has to be in by,
That's what they
So
do.
it's the county.
yes,
Can we change
I don't know why. Because, and not only that, but that time period, you try and call them up there, it's nuts. Everybody's doing this exact same thing. No, I think that clock's wrong, it's 4:30.
Yeah.
Call to order at what, 4:30?
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Joe Martinez here.
George Vasco here.
Matthew Moreno here.
Derek Everett here.
Kathy's excused. There's no.
Proof of notice.
No problems.
Approval of minutes, September 27th.
I didn't see any problem.
No, I didn't.
Motion to accept. Second.
Motion approved.
Joe Martinez, yes.
George Vasco, yes.
Matthew Moreno, yes.
Derek Everett, yes. Public comments. Move on to financial and billing report.
Okay, well, we're still fighting with Medicaid. I had the young woman at the building company look up what we have, and she's showing, not that Medicaid is a poor payer, but we billed out $505,514, and we're expecting $41,500 payment. So that's, I think it'll probably be higher than that, because I think they do their base rate. I don't know about the mileage, because usually they're pretty good on mileage, but anyway, that's still being argued. Basically what happened was we did our revalidation in August. We were getting paid after August. Everything was working fine. They changed their system, and we didn't change anything. Same code, same, everything is going through. The state changes their system to the Hewlett-Packard system, and then we started getting claims denied. And then they said we had to have two separate portals, one for emergency and one for non-emergency. And now they're sending us EOBs that have denials on them, but the denials on the EOBs don't match the denials that are on the computers. And so it's just, this is just going on and on and on. And we've talked to, we've got Senator Garcia's office involved, so he's pushing this forward. And we're actually dealing with an attorney from the healthcare policy financing, HICPUF they call it, which is Medicaid. And so he's actually handling this for the state. So they told her that they've gone ahead and backdated everything so we can submit the claims. The claims were released yesterday, so she said by Friday she should know whether or not this is going to work. The budget, I mean, the money in the bank's looking good. It's holding high, and still with the accounts receivable in there up at 3.8, which is, we're just kind of holding that line.
As long as we're not losing.
Yeah. Well, and you know, when you do what you know, we go down and then taxes come, we go back up. But the one thing, I went back and looked at some of the goals that we had, especially maybe going back to Rick Johnson's days, and I know we were probably 55–56% tax subsidy, and the rest was fee for service. And now we flipped that around, so now we're about 57% fee for service. So we've gone we've taken over. Right, we flop it so that now we're getting paid more for what we do rather than just from the taxes, and that's why we've been able to hold that line even though we've lost the money in tax revenue. So we budgeted $2,527,000 for the 2017 budget. You can see we're already at 2.2 at the end of September on the profit and loss year-to-date comparison. So I don't think we're going to have any problem hitting our budget number for this year. Everybody on that. So it's showing $2,200,349. We budgeted $2,527,000. So we got, this is September. So I think we're going to be
All right.
We're going to be okay. Yeah. So billing is still doing good. They're still bringing in the money. Our only hiccup is that that silly Medicaid thing. Other than that, everything else is good. So, no.
And I have a question.
Okay.
In no way am I against people going to training and going to conferences and things like this. I just, I see $19,000 here. Just kind of explain where, where that went. I mean, who's training, and I have no objection to a person going to training and things like that.
Yeah, well, a lot of that is when we go to conferences or we do books that we bought, things like that. The training, is it just the training?
Well, I mean, there's $19,000 that we spend, travel, air, cab, administration, $6,000, and then total travel expense, other, $3,681.
Yeah, I think that was airfare. We just had the big conference, the big EMS Expo, but we've had a couple of things up in Denver. Gabe went up to Denver. He's taking the ambulance service manager program, so we paid for the tuition for that.
I don't have a problem.
Right. So that's where that's going. That tuition was that's the same one we put Dan through, and that was what, like 45.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Well, I know, and then we probably have the same agreement that if he stays, we're all right with that.
Right. And we're not reimbursing any tuition. This is just a certification fee class, right? So, and that's where that's going, and that's kind of it's a pricey class, but it's worth it. Actually, when we just got back from the EMS Expo, and a lot of the people that are teaching his class were presenting at EMS Expo, so it's tough.
And how many did you take? How many?
We took 5.
5?
Yeah.
Okay, I know, last January to September, we spent none. This way.
Yeah, and that's not correct, and that's where we were working out with. She's been making adjustments to the budget based off of the audit and moving stuff around, but we had travel expenses.
Well, I would think we did.
Yeah.
But I know it has a 0 on this.
I questioned her about that. She says a lot of that, two things. One is we have people from outside doing a budget, and they did it a different way. Then Mike Dixon came in, went back to the way we were doing it. So not only are we changing the numbers back from what they were under that other, so they changed it from the way Dixon was doing it. Now we're changing it back, and some of those things are going into a different chart of accounts.
Okay.
So they're getting put, all the money is accounted for, but Bernadette and I have conversations all the time about, shouldn't it be here or there?
That's why during the audit I came up with that voucher system. He'd like to see a voucher. This way you have the backup in case you want to ask a question, or you just go to it, look at it, and you know exactly
Where it went.
Right.
on what and the whole bit. So
Yeah, and that's a lot better from 2 years ago and last year, so anything that comes in.
Well, and that voucher
Hey,
system
and
is
I
gonna
know we
cover
need
everything.
training, and I know people need to go places to stay on the cutting edge of things, I know that. And I don't have a problem with that. I just kinda wanna have a ballpark figure, a ballpark idea as to what we're doing.
Well, we'll kind of, like, that's kind of under the director's report, some of the stuff that we saw.
Oh, okay.
Just who, what, when, and where, huh?
I don't have a problem with the rest, I mean, I looked through all of it.
Done with the financial?
Yeah, medicine's always changing, you know, and there's only one constant in medicine, that's it's always changing, things are new developing. One of the things they got from one of the conferences they went to was this eye gel that we're using as, you can't get somebody intubated, it's a plastic thing you put in and you can breathe for them. And, you know, so they brought it back here, it looked like, this is probably 5 years ago, it looked like a good idea to me, so we tried it out in Trinidad, and it worked great in Trinidad, and so I'm the medical director for pretty much every EMS agency in southeast Colorado, almost 30 agencies, so I opened it up to all the agencies, and it worked well, and now Denver and Springs have gone to that same supraglottic airway, so it's you know, things are always changing, and it's important. It costs money to those conferences,
Sure.
you know, and they're never at cheap places either.
No, and we wanna stay on the cutting edge, we wanna be the best if we can, you know.
Well, what I think is pretty cool about Trinidad is that we're this little town, but we make changes that change what they're doing in the rest of the state, which is kind of slick. So, I mean, I went up, it was, I think the year after, you approved that, and I went to the Northwest RETAC conference in, Glenwood Springs, and they were, one of the guys had been to the Gathering of Eagles, which I was just talking to Dr. Weber about, going to in March. They have all these medical directors get together, and they talk about basically the state of EMS and what's working, and what needs to change. And he was talking about how, he said, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but they've got this new airway, it's called an eye gel, and they were talking about that. Now they're, start this.
Oh, I forgot.
You're fired.
You can't put him in charge.
Push the red button.
We can get it off that over there.
That's why I do this too.
Yeah.
That's good.
We're good.
He just didn't see the light flick.
We can get it from Tom.
It's live right now, you're live.
So
On YouTube.
that he was talking about that, and he says now they're starting to use it here and here and here, and I said, well, we kind of
Didn't use it.
we brought that here. So he was, it just kind of cool to hear him in other places. I mean, all the way up there, talking about something that we brought to the state here. So, and get ready to make some other changes that I'll go over in the practice.
Okay.
So that's financial and billing. If there's any more.
I make a motion that we accept the financial and billing report.
Second.
Roll call.
Joe Martinez, yes.
George Dasco, yes.
Matthew Moreno, yes.
Derek Everett, yes.
On the director's report, just wanted to talk about the EMS expo that we went to. And Dr. Paul Pepe has been around EMS for kind of a legend in EMS. He's been around for years and years. And he did a presentation on this research they've been doing in CPR, which, you know, the American Heart Association changes standards every 5 years or so. They come out with a new guideline. They change advanced cardiac life support. They change CPR. Well, one of the things that they're talking about now is they've had this device. And I'm telling you, I saw it. I was telling Dr. Weber, I saw a guy, another guy that's pretty famous name, Howard Champion. When I was in medic school, he had this plunger, and he was talking about doing CPR and basically using a plunger on somebody's chest, so that not only do you compress, but you create the negative pressure when you pull up, and that's when your heart beats, none of the blood goes into your heart. I mean, it doesn't do any good for your heart. When your heart relaxes, that's when all your coronary arteries fill, and so that's why they want that negative pressure, and it improves. And then they're talking about I mean, for a while there, they were talking about don't do CPR, just stick somebody's head in a bucket of ice, try and save the brain, and then we'll worry about the heart later. I mean, it's been crazy for years. So now they did a study, and they're putting people at a 30, you used to be laid in flat, now they want their head at a 30-degree incline, because they're seeing that it decreases the intracranial pressure, which allows you, with this Lucas device, which it's an automatic CPR, it's a battery-operated CPR machine, but it does perfect compressions, it doesn't stop, and it's got the little plunger on it so that it compresses and it pulls up, and it's doing it 100 beats. There's no. And that's the other thing they found is when CPR is stopped, and they did a matter of fact, when we were at the conference year before last, there was a doc there, and they had just released a study showing how many times, you ask a medic, how many times did you stop CPR during this arrest? And they'll say, oh, I don't think we ever stopped. And then they were recording it, and we'd get on the Zols now. It shows every compression that you do. And you can see the pauses that you have, and they were averaging, 10 different stoppages, and they were going on for 15 to 30 seconds. And it's like, that's not what you want, because you're kind of priming the pump with CPR. And so if you can once you get it going, you kind of build up a flow. And when you stop those compressions, that drops way down, and then you've got right, exactly. You lose the prime. You got to pump it right back up again. So this device stops you from losing the prime, and you can attach this device and have them at a 30-degree angle. And then they've got another device called a rescue pod, and what it does is when we're bagging somebody, ventilating them, it actually creates a negative pressure in their lungs. And Dr. Weber actually came here, it's got to be 3 years now. 3 years ago, when we changed, we kind of went from true CPR to what they were doing in Phoenix for years, which is cardiocerebral resuscitation. So we were just ventilating. That iGel was perfect when we found it, because you can put that thing in, attach oxygen to it, and it pushes air into the lungs. So the oxygen is getting into the lungs, even though you're not breathing, it's saturated. So the pressure of the oxygen in your lungs is higher. If blood is going past, it's going to pick up.
So it doesn't make sense thinking about it, So our resuscitation right now calls for the initial 5 to 8 minutes that we're just putting oxygen on. We're not breathing for the patient at all. And you think to yourself, how can that work? You're doing CPR, like there's a column of air going up, you're not getting oxygen to the lungs. So it turns out that oxygen is absorbed by the lungs at about 250 mLs per minute, and CO2 is released at about 15 mLs a minute. So oxygen is absorbed at a much faster rate than CO2 is being released, and so even if you're not breathing at all for the patient, when you hook up oxygen, there's still a net flow of oxygen down to the lungs that's being absorbed. And it's funny, this data has actually been known for decades, so you can never repeat this study. But in 1959, some anesthesiologists paralyzed some guys. They intubated them, so they're paralyzed. They can't breathe at all. They just put 100% oxygen at the end of the ET tube, and they checked their blood gases, and the average was about 25 minutes before they desaturated. The longest was 54 minutes. So this guy's going 54 minutes without taking a breath, and his oxygen saturation stayed up.
Wow.
But of course, his CO2 built up and his pH went way down.
Yeah.
But it just shows the importance of pre-oxygenation and the importance of passive oxygenation during our initial resuscitation phase.
Well, the other thing was you'd put that tube in them, and then we'd start bagging. Well, that puts a positive pressure in the lungs. Well, now we've got that positive pressure, it pushes the blood that we're trying to get in there out. So with just letting the passive oxygen go in, they're getting the oxygen, and we're not pushing blood out of their heart. So so in other words, every time you would bag somebody, you're kind of impeding the blood flow to the coronary arteries. And so one of the things we all used to do at the cardiac arrest is we're hyperventilating. We're bagging somebody like every 3 seconds. Because more oxygen is good, right? Well, then we find out, no, what we've been doing is just building up the pressure in the lungs. So when we release, that pressure's still in there, and it's not letting their coronary arteries fill. So we stopped doing that, and like Dr. Weber and I were talking earlier when they had the rescue pod, that little tab that you would pull off, and it had a little light that would come on every 6 seconds, so you knew when to bag. And they said they didn't know if it was actually this impedance threshold device making negative pressure, or was the fact that people knew not to hyperventilate, not to bag, until that
Yeah,
light
they like,
went off, so you weren't pushing the blood out. So now they're recommending all three, so we talked about seeing if we could get a grant to get that Lucas device, so that if CPR is being performed, it's performed flawlessly, positive, negative pressure, we could sit the head up and see if we get do things so that we have better survival to discharge and neurologic survival to discharge, because we save your heart, but your brain is dead, right? It doesn't do you any good. So
Don't save my heart.
yeah, you want the other part too, right? Yeah.
I want the other part more than the other one.
So we're talking about doing that, seeing if we can get a grant for the Lucas device. We want the rescue pods, I think we'll be able to get. But some other things that they have now that are amazing is we can do ultrasounds in the field now. So we can see if somebody's got blood, if they're bleeding internally, if they've got a pneumothorax where a lung is collapsed, you can actually see that stuff. And they have a thing called a FAST exam. And you can do those in the field, and they actually had a device there that this girl was using on herself. It was pretty cool, and so she's just using it. She had it on an iPad. You can use it on your smartphone.
really,
Yeah, so this device hooks up, just syncs Bluetooth, and you can see what's going on. So we're thinking about, especially when we're talking about somebody who's had a wreck out in West End, if we know that they've got a bleed or something, then we want to fly them. We don't want to take them here, yeah.
How much are those?
The Lucas device is 15. The rescue pods, I think, are about $100 a piece. The ultrasound, we don't know for sure, but they're telling us about 11. That was 60 something, 100.
Yeah, that was 60,
Yeah.
I think.
Depending on
6,800?
yeah, depending on the options. And then they've got another thing now where we can actually do lab work in the field. So we can actually tell if your hemoglobin and hematocrit is low. If
We
you're
don't run
bleeding.
into any certification things on this, any problems?
We've got to get a waiver for the lab stuff. But the other stuff is that's all in our,
That's all within your
Scope of practice.
scope of practice. Okay.
yeah. The lab things we have to get you have to get certified, do the lab, the paperwork to be a lab.
You need a waiver for the ultrasound too. There's one agency in the state that has a waiver for ultrasound, and they're just, right now, it's just collecting data, so they're not making decisions on their results. What they're doing is they're seeing if the results correlate to the patient's actual findings in the hospital.
So if what they're seeing matches with the hospital, yeah. So it's just, and the ultrasound, I think, would probably be the last thing, but I think the Lucas device and the rescue pod is something that, since apparently that's going to be published next month, so we got it before it's actually been out. And I gave Dr. Weber the slides thing that Dr. Pepe did. But, so there's changes coming, and we can, again, we think we can do something, and Gabe was asking if anybody else is doing this in the state, and they're not. Start this thing.
Especially with the travel times, especially to get that CPR going, because I mean, there might not be people and you don't have to.
Yeah, when you're in rural America, you gotta transport them a long way sometimes.
Well, we don't, the thing is, if somebody, what they found in all the research is that if a paramedic doesn't resuscitate you in the field, they're not gonna resuscitate you in the hospital. And so that's why we used to get people that were in cardiac arrest, we loaded them in the ambulance, we took them to the hospital. We don't even do that anymore. We work on a cardiac arrest for 20 minutes, and if they're not showing anything that's workable after 20 minutes, then they're pronounced. They don't get transported because they're not.
So the idea of what a patient in cardiac arrest needs, they need good CPR, they need monitoring, they need electricity, and anything that you do that detracts from good CPR decreases their chances of survival. So we changed our protocol a few years ago where we're not transporting patients unless they get a pulse back, because even a 5-second stop in CPR stops everything, and you have to get it going. So you imagine, you're on scene, you're providing good CPR, and you say, all right, let's go to the hospital. you have to stop CPR, you get them on the rig. The rig is kind of bouncing, so you're not doing good CPR. You have to stop CPR, get them in the ambulance, you get back in the back of the ambulance. There's been several studies that show you don't provide adequate CPR in the back of the ambulance. The same thing, you get to the hospital, you have to stop CPR several times, and the hospital really doesn't have a magic bullet.
But if you had this machine, it would continue
Exactly.
all the time.
Right, the thing about CPR is that people tire out.
Oh,
So especially,
Three or four guys.
right.
So we talked about working with fire, and we wanna have a thing, we talked about it with Dr. Webber today, that when we show up on an arrest, one person gets on each side of that patient, and they do compressions till they hit 100. And then they're gonna stop and they'll start counting. So 91, 92, so the other person knows, okay, I'm getting ready to start 99, 100. 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're just gonna go from one person to the other, and they're gonna switch off every minute. Because they've shown that after 2 minutes, your CPR is just, you're not doing the compressions, or you're not rebounding all the way, and that's where we end up with the decrease in coronary artery blood flow, and not only that, but like Dr. Webber said, if you're gonna put people at a 30-degree incline, you're gonna have to have the Lucas device in order to do that, because you can't do CPR. You'd have to do it, we'd have to get short boards, which went out years ago, that to provide a stiff surface under the back of them. But that's what we're talking about. So if we can get a grant, the 50% grant from the state, we're thinking about getting 2 for the first out truck, so that if they hit a cardiac arrest, we do that. But changing what we're doing right now to where when we show up at an arrest, we've got one person on each side of that patient, and then they just swap off every minute. So we know they're getting. You can do CPR for a minute, rest for a minute, come back on for a minute, and theoretically you're going to do that 10 times each, because
Chest compressions for
20
a minute
minutes.
will take it out of you.
It really does.
It does.
And plus the excitement of
Trying to revive them.
But like
Yeah,
Dr.
it
Webber
does.
said, when you transport, you're gonna have to put them. They're on the floor. You're gonna have to put them on a backboard. So you have to stop to roll them over to put the backboard on, and then you start compressions again. And priming the pump.
Well, that's exactly
Now you gotta lift the
stop.
backboard up to put them on the gurney. And now you stop again.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna load the gurney into the back of the truck. Now it's really hard to go up those steps,
Or this machine
and so you stop
constantly-
again. Same thing when you come out.
Yeah.
It's just so you're stopping CPR multiple times. So the idea is get the good CPR going. If we're doing good CPR, and then we can get that Lucas device in there, get their heads popped up, get that threshold impedance device on them, that if they get good coronary blood flow, that when we shock them, there's a much greater chance. Not only that, the drugs we're giving circulate better, and there's a much greater chance that their muscle and their heart will respond to the electricity.
Expensive. Reacts faster.
How will that Lucas work, like an AED or something?
The pads don't, it just goes right through the pads.
Okay. So
He's
going in-
saying when you're doing
and it says shock, do you have to shut the machine off, or does the machine just keep on
You
doing it?
can pause it, you can pause the machine
Okay.
and then shock it and then hit
And then hit
Okay.
start again and it goes right back to where it was.
To where it was,
Yep.
no problem.
Yeah, there's no, it just, and not only that, it's got one where it'll do the 30 and 2, give you time for 2 breaths, but there's a continuous mode.
Well, and that's
which is
what you want, is continuous.
We just do the continuous and with between the eye gel, continuous CPR, tilting their head up, and and if you've got that machine doing CPR, then when you're giving IV medications, they're getting around.
So you're gonna apply for a grant for this stuff?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, this year, since we already got the ambulance, we're thinking, because we're talking about that, mostly we want the Lucas, which is, they're saying about 15,000, so that would be 15,000 if we get 2, because that'd be 30 for 2. 50% grant would be 15. The Lucas device is just a medical supply that we'd have to buy. The ultrasound and the lab work would be great, but to us that's more of a future thing. The lab work more so than the ultrasound, because we've talked to Dr. Webber about people that are having chest pain, that are having a cardiac event, and we do the 12 lead on them, and it says that they're having a heart attack. Got an ST elevated myocardial infarction. They need to be in the cath lab, and you've got 90 minutes to get them in the cath lab. Corinne's got a cath lab, and we can be a Corwin in less than 90 minutes. So we're talking about taking those people. We've confirmed on EKG, they've got ST elevation we're going. Get them into the cath lab, because that's where they're gonna go anyway. And then, if we had something to do the labs en route to be able to tell them what's going on with them, then it just helps the hospital out. And this device that we looked at, Dr. Weber is actually using it in the ER at Corwin to get past labs, so.
Sounds like a plan.
Otherwise, it takes forever to get labs. Stat labs take how long?
Keep moving forward.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing.
Is that machine in operation, or is it just something that isn't been used?
Oh, yeah. There's two machines. Zoll has one, and it's actually kind of a better design and easier to use, but it doesn't have the suction cup thing to create that negative pressure. So the suction cup one is the one that they did the studies with. So the other one doesn't do the same. It does compressions, but it doesn't do the negative
It's
pressure.
not the same effect.
Right. So we're thinking, if we're going to make the change, do it with the one that they did the study with. That
Yeah,
showed
well,
the improvement.
and it makes common sense, because once it does that, well, it's not, it's opening that for all that.
They actually
to
have a
open
thing.
and go back in, right?
You put your hands on it, you kind of grab it, it's got the suction cup in the middle to do compressions, manual compressions, and it's got a gauge on it to let you know
What you're doing.
that you're going down far enough, and that you're recoiling all the way.
So it'll, wow, well, that's pretty cool.
So we're gonna look at those too, but those I don't think were those weren't thousands of dollars each. It's just a manual thing with a spring gauge in it, but it does the same thing. It does that negative, so as soon as we get there, if we're starting that positive, negative pressure, and you've got something that tells you that your CPR is good. If you guys haven't been to one of the CPR classes here, the mannequins we have are actually pretty amazing in that they will tell you while you're working on the mannequin, you're too slow, you're too fast, you're not going deep enough, you're not recoiling. It's pretty amazing. So when you get a CPR class here, it's not just throwing the dummy down there and you're pushing and everybody says that's good. It tells you that you're doing it the right way. So,
No, apply for it.
okay, that's all I have.
Just let us know when, update on that.
Operations. September, steady, about the same as every other month, 186 calls for service. We had 148 total transports, 37 of those were inter-facility. From the sounds of it, I'm imagining October will be a little higher than that. Call volumes been even all the way throughout. Again, the majority of our calls have been here in Trinidad, 158.
Doesn't look much different from what we.
No, we've stayed pretty steady.
Pretty consistent.
Yeah, I think we're on par to do about as many calls as we did last year. So our transfers seem to be going up. Our ER winner this month was Dr. Gibb.
I noticed that.
Aside from that, there's not a whole lot to report. For changes.
The only other thing is there is a nationwide shortage of medications.
Yes.
And I mean pretty much every pain medication that's out there. And when I say a shortage, fentanyls we can't get until
Fentanyl and morphine are on back order until Q2 and Q3 of next year.
Wow.
yeah, epinephrine, just a basic cardiac drug.
I just got my epinephrine in that I ordered in June. I just got 10 of them in last week. And I've got another 10 on back order. Who knows when I'll get them.
You don't know when they're going to come in. So
What's the problem?
there's been it was something they discussed at the EMS Expo. One of the things is that about 15% of the manufacturing plants are in Puerto Rico.
They ain't there no more.
Well, okay, so 15% of manufacturing plants were in Puerto Rico.
Are nowhere to be found.
So it's interrupted the manufacture there, but you know, we've had this before where, and the things we couldn't get, I don't understand. It's like D50, which is sugar water. We couldn't get sugar water. We couldn't get normal saline ID fluid, so you can't get salt water. Those are the things we couldn't we couldn't get. It was, it's mind-boggling. But you know, they have to go through, you can't just mix water and sugar. There's a whole FDA process to go through and the way they have to do it. And so, I said another problem is that these aren't big money-making drugs for some of these companies, so they're not, it's not on their priority list. So they'll do a run of them, and if they run out before they do another run, they run out. It doesn't behoove them to do it. So we're down, what med's down?
Still down epi, rocuronium, which is a paralytic, the morphine, the fentanyl,
Ketamine.
sodium bicarb, ketamine. I'm hoping to get allotted in. Atropine was on back order. Amiodarone was a back order. So there's like 10 or 12 drugs.
Lidocaine?
What's our supply now?
Lidocaine is.
So,
What's our supply now?
Right now we're right at,
Are we
right
real
at,
critical?
at the minimum.
it will be in a month, if we get a couple of calls. And these are all the basic cardiac drugs. They're all the basic drugs for advanced cardiac life support, which is what's scary. So it's like, if you don't have that epinephrine, what do we do? That's your first line drug. So it's kind of like, we won't run out of electricity, but the electricity by itself doesn't.
Yeah.
Is anybody aware of this problem and trying to fix it?
Yeah, even the feds are aware of it. They've told people that they can use the, when they give them like a 6 month past the expiration date.
Yeah.
So that even the feds are like, you know, we understand it's expired, just use it, go 6 months past the expiration date. So they know that it's an issue, but there's no, everybody's talking about it, but I don't sense, there's no sense of urgency
There's no immediate
that I'm seeing.
Well,
So, that's kind of concerning.
so you're just gonna deal with
And the
it.
hospital's doing fine, they're not having issues that you know
They haven't told me
of. You'll be the last to know. You'll ask for epi and they'll say we don't have any, and that's how you'll find out, right?
So you're just gonna do it, case by case, I guess, then, huh?
Well, and they said one of the things that people started doing is prioritizing their pain medication.
Right.
So if they have somebody, we had a call earlier from kidney stones, we discussed that, and I'm like, it's like, well, nobody dies from kidney stones before they're one of the most painful.
They're painful.
So it's like, do we use it on that, or do we wait till we have, you know, an isolated extremity trauma, or you're kind of taking it, or do we just first come, first serve, and when we're out, we're out? Yeah, it's a horrible.
It's
a
not a
bad
good
thing to do.
situation.
And we looked at some, we actually have there was another drug that's available, and we just ordered 50,
Doses.
of Dilaudid, which you probably have.
Yeah, they gave me
It's
some of
good,
that.
it's good stuff. And, it's long lasting, and so we're hoping, and they had it in stock, said it was in stock, ready to ship, and we do have a protocol for that. So we're hoping that those 50 will tide us over until we get those other meds back. So that's, we've got a plan B, that's our plan B.
You gotta go to
but
what's
it-
available.
Yeah,
That's all you can do.
but as far as the cardiac drugs, there's no substitute. So I don't know what's a substitute for epinephrine. There isn't one.
Live with it.
Or don't live with it.
That's the key. Right? What are you gonna do?
It's a sad situation
Yeah.
to be in.
Yeah, that's it.
The Stericycle lawsuit
There's
update?
no update. I emailed them to see if we could get a, negotiate a lower rate, and I didn't get an answer from them. So I'm still waiting to hear whether or not they wanna do it.
Miscellaneous items? I think the only thing that we could discuss was our meeting with the college foundation. We wanna go-
Yeah, we met with the college and we told them that, they said the same thing, same conversation we've had, is that, you know, if we're gonna pay almost $300,000 for something, we might as well do the indoor ring. And, so, they said they would go back to the board, and then Derek and I got an email a week ago saying the board wants to keep it at the 288.
Yeah, that's
$1,000, so I think as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
with,
that's
at
more
that
than
pri-
what we
at
want,
that
to be
price,
honest.
we're
Yeah.
better off
Yeah.
doing our own facility.
Just imagine what you could get
And
for
it-
280,000.
It's not even worth leasing it because
What you
they-
wanna put in.
the way that they're designing the range is going against everything that we would wanna use it for, so.
I
it
can't
just-
see that.
Yeah, there was differences in how we set it up and how we wanted to use it, so it wasn't a good situation for either side.
Well, that's good then.
I just thank him for the offer.
Yeah.
That's all you can do, and then we just go forward with what we plan to later on down the road.
Yeah, glad you-
Sounds good.
Don't remember much.
How was it not, huh?
Yeah, I guess. Still something in there. I guess we, executive session to discuss the City of Trinidad dispatch funding
Yeah, cite the,
under CRS 24-6-402 subsection 4E.
okay.
Then we may and may not make any decisions.
Right?
We get a motion to go into executive.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call.
Thank you.
Joe Martinez, yes?
George Dasco, yes.
Desmond Moreno, yes.
Eric
See ya.
Albright, yes.
See you guys.
Good to see you.
Thanks.
No issues?